Good morning. Hello and welcome to this week's live. I'm on a bit of a live roll again, like I was last year. I really enjoy doing lives actually. So I hope that you're enjoying these. And please subscribe if you haven't yet to my channel. Please do give me a like, thumbs up. What are the options? Share with your friends, tell your friends about my channel. It just makes such a difference, and it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe and to like videos if you like them. So today I am talking about the 5 reasons. I actually think I've come up with more since I decided on that title, but the 5 reasons why your voice isn't working and why you might be taking action. Again, this is, I must make that clear. I'm assuming here you are taking action. Obviously, your voice isn't going to work if you're not doing anything, but let's say you are taking action and you're not getting the results you want. I'm going to talk today about some of the reasons why you might not be getting the results that you want, even though from your perspective, you're doing things, you're taking action, you're practicing, you're doing the things that you know are helping your voice. So you're obviously trying to create new vocal habits, presumably, otherwise you wouldn't be on this channel. So if your voice is great and you don't have any issues with it, you probably won't be watching my videos. So what have you tried? I actually have been doing a couple of polls. I did put one on my YouTube channel yesterday, and I put one on my LinkedIn page as well, because I'm just really interested to know what, and you can maybe comment below, what have you tried? And maybe you tried a few things. You know, most people that come and work with me have tried lots of things, and they've kind of resigned themselves to the fact now that they need help and they can't do it by themselves. But anyway, we'll come to that at the end. So maybe you've had a few ad hoc voice lessons. So a lot of the time, people will just have a few lessons here and there. You know, they might have one and then have another one 6 months later. They keep it very casual. They keep it very ad hoc. So is that you? Have you tried a few voice lessons? Maybe you've had a couple, maybe you've had 3, and then you've, just moved on. Maybe you have gone on a public speaking workshop. That's also very common. I hear a lot of people are sent on those through work as well. Work will often send people on public speaking workshops. Maybe you've done some online courses, and I have got 2 online courses myself. So again, I'm not dissing any of this at all, but it's really starting to become aware of what's holding you back. So just to pay attention to what you tried, because it's not these things in themselves, as we'll get to, it's the mind behind these things, which we'll come to in a minute. So also things like YouTube videos. I mean, I think nowadays, most people, including myself, we use YouTube to try and teach ourselves things, to try and learn things. No more so than voice technique, voice exercises, etc. I mean, it really is a treasure trove of information. And I mean, I tried to use a YouTube channel, tried to use a YouTube video during lockdown to learn how to cut my own hair, and it was a disaster. It wasn't the fault of the person in the video. They did make it look really easy, and I managed to like hack at my hair. But my point is, there's just so much out there, and actually that is a very good example for why it doesn't work, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So have you watched YouTube videos? Do you continue to watch YouTube videos? Really good. Don't stop watching them. Don't stop watching my channel. But again, what's driving this? And finally, things like books. There are some brilliant books out there, no question. I've got a lot of them myself. So do you have a couple of books and you're kind of going through some exercises? And again, I hear that from clients or potential clients. They will say, I bought the book of Roger Love, for example, very famous voice coach in the US. And I've been doing his exercises in the book. So nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to come to why this may not be working in a minute. So just first of all, think about what you've tried. How much investment, how much time and energy and money have you put into this? Or have you not really put much time or money or effort into it? Because I think often with this, we are looking for the magic pill. If I can just find the right exercise, if I can just find the right technique, then all my problems will be solved, which is not the case, unfortunately. There is no magic pill. And I say this all the time. There is no magic pill to transforming your voice. It's an inner journey, And it also requires physical effort, exercises, agility, flexibility, strength training, freeing muscles. There's so much that goes into it. There is no quick fix. There is no quick route to transforming your voice. So the overarching reason why you would be struggling to create lasting change with your voice, and I'm going to talk about some of the sort of sub reasons in a minute, but the overarching reason is probably not going to be a massive surprise to you if you watch any of my other videos, is because unconsciously, or maybe consciously, but most likely very unconsciously, you don't want to be heard. You don't actually want the voice that you say you want, or you don't want it enough. So there is some unconscious fears around expression, around being heard, around being seen, around being more visible, around being more successful. So if that is running the show at the deepest unconscious level, it really doesn't matter how many videos you watch, how many books you read, how many courses you go on, how many online courses you do, but still buy my course. It really doesn't matter, because that is ultimately running the show. And the unconscious mind is like 95% of our mind. So it carries the weight of everything. And that's why that is such a big part of my private voice coaching, because if you don't address those unconscious fears, beliefs, and feelings around your voice and expression, it is almost like a waste of time. Not a total waste of time. You will get some change, but you're not going to create lasting change. So some of the beliefs that you might have, and again, my whole new course is about this, actually, about the shadow, about the voice persona that we have, the shadow that we're pushing away, but just some of the things to think about with your own voice. We have a negative relationship, or we've made it wrong or bad to be heard in some shape or form. So we need to look at what was modeled to us growing up around expression. Really important. What was the messaging I got around expression? But for most of us, I mean, I was the youngest. Well, I am the youngest still am the youngest in my family, female as well. I got a lot more attention probably than my brother and sister. And so there was often a lot of resentment around that. So yes, I was given more attention, but it came with a lot of negativity. And certainly as I've got older, I've certainly seen that play out more. It's like the youngest usually does get more attention. Generally speaking, in families, I think. So that often can drive. So we get that kind of mixed messaging. We're getting the attention because we're the youngest, for example, and female in my case. But there's also this negativity because people don't like it, particularly your other siblings. There might have been jealousy. There might have been resentment because you got more attention. You got more adoration, or, you were basically in the limelight more. And people don't like it, particularly siblings, and in families, it causes problems. So I definitely saw that. So I personally had a real conflict around center of attention. And it sounds mad because I'm a singer, and I had my kind of one foot in, one foot out. I wanted the attention, but I didn't want the attention, because that's really what was modeled to me growing up. I got the attention, but it came with a lot of negativity. So of course, when your voice is free, it's powerful, it's expressive, people are going to listen to you. People are going to listen to you. So are you comfortable with that? Or are you waiting for the other shoe to drop? Are you waiting for people to judge you, to criticize you, to abandon you? So that's the first one. The second one, again, I can relate to probably all of these, to be honest, is expressing your opinions and views about things. So, for example, maybe you don't feel you're educated enough, you're not qualified enough to have an opinion on this. You're in a meeting at work and there's people with more experience. They've been in the company longer, they've been in this career longer. Who are you to say what you think? What do you know? I remember going in the early days of my voice training. So I've been doing this for about 15 years now, but I remember going to some big conferences in the US. And this was in the early days when I didn't really know anything about anything. I kind of knew what the larynx was, and that was about it. And I remember sitting in these conferences and just being surrounded by people with multiple degrees and PhDs, and who were so knowledgeable about the voice. You know, we're using words I didn't even understand what they were saying. And I was completely mute through these conferences. I don't even recognize that person anymore, but I do understand why I was that way, because I had so much fear around expressing my opinion when I didn't perceive I knew anything. And there were people in the room with far more education, far more knowledge. So I'm like, who are you to have an opinion, Anuska? What do you know about this? So I noticed that in myself, and I always remember that. And it always sat kind of very heavy within me, because obviously I knew on some level I wasn't being true to myself, because I wasn't sharing what I thought. And every opinion is valid. But again, check in with yourself, particularly if you're in a career where education is very key to being in that career, like you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you work in any sort of scientific fields where you need a degree to have that particular profession. So just check in with yourself. But I definitely remember that. I literally did not speak. I just shut my voice down. I hid in the corner and didn't want anyone to notice me, and just felt really stupid because a lot of the time I didn't even understand half of the conversations that were going on. So that's the second one. The third one is conflict. And I talked about this at length last week. But if you have any fear around conflict, you will not allow your voice out on some level. Because if you think about avoiding conflict, is really avoiding what you really think and feel. So if you have any sort of internal conflict with conflict, then you're not going to allow your voice out. So check out my live from last week. I'm not going to go into massive amounts of depth with that. But again, that's modeled to us. All of this is modeled to us in some way. So you have to sort of start to look at that. But it's more than that, because the shadow is unconscious. So that's the first step, becoming aware of those patterns, which I would say is in your pre-conscious. So your pre-conscious is what you might commonly hear as limiting beliefs. It's what most sort of in the personal development world, they talk about what are your limiting beliefs. This is beyond limiting beliefs, but you do have to start with the limiting beliefs. So what you're consciously aware of, what you can access quite quickly and what easily. So do you have any fear around conflict? Do you fear expressing yourself, standing up for yourself, saying no to people, or saying yes to people? It's not just no, it could be yes. If you do, the thing with the ego is it will reject anything that could vaguely be perceived as conflict. So whatever you've decided is wrong, if you perceive conflict as wrong, because you've seen extreme examples of that, which I did as well growing up, then if you judge that as wrong, you will reject anything that could vaguely be perceived as conflict, which could be you just saying no to someone. But your ego's like, no, that's dangerous. You can't say that. So again, this is where the shadow comes in, because the ego is so clever. It really holds us back. That will 100% hold your voice back. So again, if this is going on unconsciously, doesn't matter how many videos you watch, doesn't matter how many exercises you do, doesn't matter how many workshops you go to, you have to address this. And then finally, I mean, they're all kind of connected in fairness, but I sort of separated them out. Vulnerability, like having real vulnerable conversations about how you feel. And I don't mean necessarily kind of quote unquote negative conversations. It could just be telling people you love them, telling people how much they mean to you. Do you find that hard? Do you find it hard to express your love for people, your adoration? Do you find it hard to give people compliments? Like, is there a fear around that aspect of expression? You know, perhaps you didn't hear that growing up. You weren't told that you were loved growing up. So it's very scary for you to express that. So again, all of this is running the show. It's just most of the time it's so unconscious. And because it happened, it was, you know, it was sort of part of us, such a young part of us. We think it doesn't really impact us anymore, but it's 100% impacting us as an adult, unless we've done the inner work. So what happens then is unconsciously we're avoiding all of this stuff, which we're not aware of. Maybe we're aware of it a bit, but we think it doesn't really matter. So we don't do the inner work, or we don't go very deep with the inner work. We might do the limiting beliefs, but we don't do the deep shadow work. And so what happens instead is we focus on what I would call surface voice, surface kind of voice I was going to say issues, but surface, I can't think of the word. Surface solutions, that's what I'm trying to think of. Surface solutions to our voice problems. I was trying to think, what is the word? So I hear this a lot, and there's a lot of people out there that provide quick tips. Why do you want a quick tip? I mean, you've got to question this. You know probably on some level a quick tip is not going to create lasting change. Yet we seek quick tips. Give me a quick tip to lose weight. Give me a quick tip to change my voice. Fill in the blank. Why do you want a quick tip? Why don't you want to actually create lasting change? And really, truthfully, it's because you fear the change. You fear who you're going to become when you change, when your voice actually is really powerful and effortless and expressive. You show up differently. It's a trigger to the people around you. It's a threat to the people around you. They're used to you playing small. They're used to you hiding. They're used to you flying under the radar. And suddenly you're shining and you're thriving and you're really successful. It's a real threat to the people around us. And again, this is not to blame them. This is the ego. The ego likes to feel in control and safe. So when people start to change around us, it's a threat. So again, just check in with that, because that was certainly a big thing for me. Again, it's like I've had to do so much shadow work myself. So I really am walking my talk here. I'm not saying you need to do it and I'm great. I've done so much of this work myself. I'm so aware now of all of this, which I never used to be. And then I wondered why, despite my years of training, my years of study, my years of voice exercises and lessons, that my voice wasn't really growing in proportion to the effort that I was putting in. And this is why, because unconsciously I really feared it. So are you seeking quick tips? That's the first thing. So start to question that. Why don't you want to go deep? Why don't you want to put the time in? Because your voice is absolutely essential for anything you do. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your job is. You need your voice. The second thing is you're trying to apply things in your voice, but you're not necessarily applying them correctly. So you read in a book, or you watch one of my videos or someone else's video, or you read in a book, do this exercise, and you sort of try and follow what they're saying, but you're not actually doing it correctly, not deliberately. You just don't really know what you don't know. So then in that process, you're actually exacerbating the issue. You're actually creating more problem versus resolving the problem. So that's another thing I see. And this is, I suppose I was going to come to this as a separate point, but underlying all of this is you're trying to do it by yourself. You're trying to do it on the cheap by yourself with minimal support. So you're trying to listen to videos and implement those exercises, but you're not actually applying it correctly. I see this all the time with clients. Because I will always say to people, what have you been doing? What have you tried? And I might get them to demonstrate some of the things they've been doing. And it's immediate to me, normally, where the issue is. They're doing an exercise that on the surface seems really easy, like a tongue trill. But there's so many things that you could do that would actually hinder that and actually create more problems. You could be squeezing, clenching, reaching, constricting, and then suddenly it doesn't have the freedom that you actually want with that exercise. So again, this is not to beat yourself up. You're not going to know if you're trying to do it by yourself. That's the point here. The other aspect of this as well is maybe the exercise just isn't right for you in the first place. So I had this, and I won't mention any names, but I had this with someone that had been reading a book of a very well-known voice coach in the US. I've got his book, actually, so it's a great book. And he said, I've been doing this exercise, which this person had said you should do. And then he demonstrated it to me, and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't be doing that with your voice, because it was actually going against what he was trying to create. Now, the exercise in itself is not bad or wrong, but not all exercises are right for every single person. It depends on your vocal habits. It depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on where your voice is at. Now, obviously, he didn't have any of that awareness. Why would he? So he was just blindly following some exercises from a book because this person had said, do these exercises. But for him, it was just actually creating more of the problem he was trying to resolve. because he didn't understand why you would use that exercise, what the purpose of it was. So this is really important. And what you really want is you want a tailored exercise program, vocal exercise program for your voice, for your tendencies, for your habits, for your body, because we all come to the table with different problems, different concerns, different fears. So it's not necessarily the exercise, or it might be in this case, that was not the right exercise for him. But it could be you're doing the right exercise, but you're just not doing it right. And underlying all of this is you're trying to do it by yourself. You just can't. Unless you are a voice teacher and you've got a lot of understanding and awareness of your voice. And even then, I would question, the greatest people in the world at anything all have a coach, you know? So it's not even really about that. I mean, people at the top of their fields, in any fields, all have mentors and coaches for this reason, because you don't know what you don't know. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So I have this too. I work with teachers and coaches and mentors all the time because I don't know. I mean, I'm very aware of my voice, probably compared to the average person, but there's so much I don't know about my voice, and I'm learning all the time. And, you know, a teacher said to me last year, she said, she said I did something weird with my face when I sang a particular note, and I didn't even know I did that. And she just stopped doing that weird thing with your face. But I didn't know I was doing it because I don't watch myself sing in the mirror all the time. But anyway, so that's that. Now, then, if you do have voice lessons. So let's say you do work with someone like myself or someone else. You have a few lessons with someone. Do you show up fully? Now, I see this all the time with people. They don't practice. They give me all the excuses under the sun while they haven't had time to practice. Yet they've invested all this money in voice coaching, or certainly if they work with me, they've invested a nice, amount to work with me, and yet they don't practice. And you're thinking, why would you not practice when you've invested all this money in working with me? Because, coming back to what I said at the beginning, there's a deep unconscious fear about having the voice. And so I will obviously then talk to the client about this and say, do you see how you're sabotaging yourself? Because if you can't find 5 minutes a day, then there's something really wrong, particularly if it's something that's really important to you. We always have time for what's important to us. We will drop anything for what's important to us, with our children or a family. We can always have time. So, and there's some shocking statistics as well. I read that the average person spends four hours a day on social media, not in one lump, but across the day, they will spend 4 hours flicking through videos, reels, posts across the board. So you can always find 5 minutes a day to do a focused vocal practice. So you've got to question then, why am I not making time for that? Because I don't believe anyone that says they have no time in the day. And if you really don't have the time, why would you sign up for voice coaching? So anyway, but again, it's like, how prepared am I? Am I practicing? Am I showing up fully? And then also, when I am in the session, am I coming prepared, or am I just sort of sitting there passively waiting to be taught at? And again, I've seen that as well, quite a lot of passivity with clients because they wait for me to do things to them, quote unquote. Someone actually said that to me last year. Again, I won't mention any names, but they said, I thought that I wouldn't really have to do anything and you would just do everything in the session with me. So I'm like, it doesn't really work like that. There's so much that has to shift, and most of that shift actually happens between sessions, which is why in my coaching you have access to me between sessions. But anyway, are you showing up with questions? Have you gone away and practiced? Have you gone away and recorded and listened and are you getting really involved, or are you quite passive in the process? Are you waiting to be dragged along, or are you really driving your vocal change? So again, I mean, I've seen all of this. And again, this is not to beat anyone up. This is not about blaming, because I understand at the deepest level, they fear the change. That's why they're doing it. They think it's because they don't have time or fill in the blank, but it's really because they fear the change. So that's what you've got to really accept, first of all, that if this is something you say you want and you're making excuses for not practicing or not doing it or trying to do it by yourself, getting stuck in this hamster wheel, on some level, you don't want the change that you say you want. And that's what we've got to address. And that's a big part of it. Because it's in your ego's interest to keep you in the status quo. It doesn't want you to change. For reasons I've sort of already alluded to before, I think a big thing, which I've already sort of mentioned, but it's worth repeating. Our whole sort of relationship with the people around us is built around us being the person that we are right now. So as we grow, as we change, as we start to use our voice differently, as we start to say no when we mean when we start to say no, my God, what's wrong with my brain? When we actually mean yes, we say yes when we mean no, when we start to really sort of change how we show up, it is a real threat to the people around us. And on some level, whether we're conscious of this or not, we fear losing people. We fear that if I really step into my power and I really allow my voice to come out and I really allow myself to be heard, I'm going to lose people. My relationship will end. My siblings won't speak to me again. People won't like me. The ego is all about survival. And at the deepest level, it's really about fitting in with our communities, with our families. And there's nothing wrong with that, but only if it's at the expense of our growth and who we really are, then it's a problem. So it's not like we're going to the other extreme and we're just trying to piss everyone off. That's not what I'm saying, but we are owning and honoring who we really are. And that's really where the fear comes in. And I've seen this in myself as well. The more particularly in the voice community, because what I talk about is not what many voice teachers talk about. I've been in this world for a long time, 15 years in terms of the teaching community. And most of the time, most teachers talk about the technique, the exercises, the tools, do this exercise for this and this exercise for that. And that's all great, but they're missing out this massive piece. And so for me to come out and talk about this more publicly and more openly brought up a lot of fear for me. What will the people in my community think? Because, I'm sort of carving my own path in this field. Even though I'm not rejecting all of that, it's still really important, but I'm saying it's not as important as it's been made out, I think, in all my training. So the mind, the ego, and how it's driving your voice is the most important thing. Because then actually, when you can really, truly be at peace with yourself, all parts of yourself, you're not afraid to be perceived in a particular way. You're not afraid to be heard. You're not afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation. You're not afraid to say no. You're not afraid to walk away. Then you really are in your power and your voice will follow suit. And that's the point. The voice never lies. It will always communicate what you're really thinking at the deepest level. So that's why often people intend one thing with their voice, but they get the opposite. They might think that they're really in their power, but their voice is not powerful because unconsciously they don't actually really feel powerful. And again, when I say powerful, I don't mean ego power, like fake power, fake confidence. I mean a true embodied sense of self that's not about anyone else. It's just about me being at peace within myself. That's what I mean by power. So really important, start to think about this in your own voice. Is this you? Are you avoiding looking at this part of yourself? Do you fear expressing yourself? Has any of that sort of resonated with you that I spoke about? Fear expressing yourself, in a meeting because you don't want to look stupid, you don't feel you're educated enough or you know enough. Fear of having an uncomfortable conversation, conflict, someone shouting at you. It's all completely natural to feel the fear, but it's keeping us stuck. And more importantly, it's keeping our voice stuck. So that is why my coaching is an 8-month container, because at the root of my coaching is really about you shifting these unconscious emotional patterns and starting to integrate them. It's about integration. It's not about just doing the opposite, or what I call persona swapping. So if you've been passive all your life, it's not now suddenly about rejecting passivity and now suddenly becoming, right, I'm going to now be assertive with everyone, because then you're still at war within yourself. It's about integration. So you're not afraid to be passive, but you're not afraid to be powerful. You're not afraid to be angry, but you're not afraid to be gentle. So you're not afraid of anything. And then you can actually be free to express yourself. So it's an 8-month container. The first 2 months are quite intensive. That's when you have real support from me, where we do the majority of the voice lessons. And that's when you can ask me questions. That's when you can send me videos. It's really an intensive first 8 weeks. Now, then the following 6 months after that, you still have access to me. You have a couple of private sessions that you can take, but you still have access to me. Because I recognize this is not a quick, coming back to my point, it's not a quick shift. So you can have the awareness, but there's going to be a lot of resistance for all the reasons I've mentioned. So you're going to be at war with yourself initially. And what I find with the private clients is usually the first month is the hardest for them. There's the most resistance that comes up. But as we start to explore that resistance and they start to integrate it, the second month they start to kind of feel more free with their voice. And then by the end of those 8 weeks, they're actually feeling like quite a different person, but they still know they've got the 6 months ahead of them to have my support, ask me questions, knowing that I'm there. I've got your back. If you have a bad day and something comes up at work or at home, you can send me an email, you can send me a message, say what's going up, and we can work through it together. So if that is of interest to you, this is deep. It comes at an investment of $5,000. Do have payment plans available. So if you're interested in this, I'd love to speak to you. You can either book a consult, so that all the links are below, 30-minute voice discovery call for £50, which even actually, if you don't work with me, you would get enormous insight into your voice and value from that. But it is more of an insight call. But if you want an actual coaching call, then that's £250. And with either option, you would get a refund if you chose to continue with me. So, but even if you don't, as I say, you get enormous value from either of those, even if you said, great, thank you, but I'm not interested in continuing. But if you are interested, as I say, I do have payment plans available. And I'd love to help you, because I feel so passionate about this, because it's just not talked about enough. And because I've done so much of this work myself, and I've seen how it's transformed my voice, but also my clients. I mean, literally a client said to me last week, she said to me, you said at the beginning of the whole process, you said I'd feel like a different person by the end. And she said, you're absolutely right. I don't even recognize the person that started. And actually she wants to continue. So, which is great. I mean, you don't have to continue, by the way, but just my point, because it's a lot more than training your voice. We're really working on you unlocking the truth of who you are. So you'll see it impacts everything, not just your voice. So thank you so much. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about today, please leave a comment below, or you can send me a message through my website, anuska-taylor.com. My website is still under construction, so it's still a holding page, but I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care.